the party that they can do anything they want to us. We might not be back. I might be in jail. I might be anywhere. But when I leave, you can remember I said with the last words on my lips that I am a revolutionary.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Our Wisconsin Revolution podcast, and as usual, I am joined with Will Walter. How you doing today, Will?
I mean, I'm alive, I guess, so that's pretty nice. Other than that, it has been a wild couple of weeks, to say the least. It reminds me of that quote where it's like, you know, sometimes decades go by where nothing happens, and sometimes weeks go by where, you know, decades worth of stuff happens. So this has been a wild couple of weeks, and past week in particular has just been, I mean, geez, there's gonna be, in 2050 there'll be like historians writing their PhDs on single individual days that happened and stuff. Like I specialized on October 2nd, the day after Trump was announced as positive and stuff. Like that's how much type stuff is going on right now. It's legitimately crazy to be witnessing this firsthand.
Yeah, exactly. It's a literal hurricane of events just constantly hitting us back and forth, from coronavirus to debates to crazy tweets. I mean, it's just nonstop. And I think what's really interesting is I think when you look back on the history books, people are going to look back like, wow, there was wildfires, there was a crazy president, there were people dying like Kobe Bryant. 2020 is just not going to be looked upon very well. But I think one of the tweets I seen that was pretty funny to me, or it was actually a meme, not a tweet, but it said it was basically that Leonardo DiCaprio meme, and it said when the Mayans misinterpreted, and it's the 2021 and not 2012.
Yeah, they have dyslexia and they put 2012 when they meant to say 2021. Yeah,
exactly. And if that is the case, I guess you can say we will go out with a bang. But I guess the first thing we should obviously talk about is that horrendous debate. Now, this was probably one of the worst debates in American history. I mean, 69% of all debate watchers said they were annoyed by the debate. The ratings were down for the debate, and Trump just looked like he was all over the place. I mean, he usually, you know, he has some nice quick hitbacks and quick punchlines, but in this debate he was just throwing everything to the wall, just interrupting that nonstop, and he just looked desperate, man. What did you take away from it?
Well, I actually saw a couple of tweets that said Chris Christie, who was one of his pre-debate preparation, you know, people, told him that people with a stutter tend to struggle to conceptualize their idea. If you cut them off, if you distract them, it kind of, you know, it might throw them for a loop, which is hilarious that, you know, a guy like Chris Christie, who acts like he's some kind of evangelical hero, that he's a good human being, is purposely taking advantage of a situation like that. It's classic GOP. But you're right. I mean, that was disastrous. I think it would be unfair. I think it's unfair to even say that might have been the worst debate in presidential history, because I don't think it is possible for that debate to have gone much worse than it did, even if we were, you know, writing a satirical comedy show about it. Like, that was just Trump was acting like a toddler that was angry that he wasn't getting his way. He had a Fox News moderator out there and still wouldn't listen to him, still wouldn't shut up, still went out of his way to cut off Joe Biden at every turn that he could, and then had the audacity to say, well, he started it, when he was told to please stop interrupting. Like, the man is a giant man-child, and we've known this for quite some time. This is not news to anybody, but to see it on the national stage like that, it would have been hilarious if it wasn't so utterly pathetic, frankly. And you know, I actually thought Joe Biden handled it pretty well, all things considered. I think the best way to handle someone like Trump, a massive egomaniacal narcissist, is to laugh at them. You know, if you get angry, you're just feeding into what they want you to do. He's just like a classic high school bully. If you instead recognize how ridiculous he looks and laugh at his face, there is nothing that would get to him more than him being the butt of the joke. You know, if you embarrass him or make him feel like he's not even worth the time. Biden did a decent job of that. I would have liked to see him more in your face about the laughing at Trump, but I know that's a bit of a contentious issue because I know that a lot of media pundits were stoked about how dignified and professionally he handled it, which he was vastly superior to Donald Trump, but I would have liked to see a much more aggressive Joe Biden. Some of the things that Trump said about both of his children, I mean, that's the type of stuff where if you say it to a guy at a bar, you're taking it out back. Like that was just unnecessary in so many ways, especially from a man who went out of his way his entire life to avoid any military participation. Neither of his children did anything in the military. It's frankly absurd, but that's classic Donald Trump, hypocritical till the very end. So, like you said, it was a disaster. It was an utter disaster. Even CNN, I saw right afterwards, described it as a quote shit show, and then had to, of course, apologize for the crude language. But that was the exact word that I used when I was watching the debate with some of my activist friends. That I just didn't have any other word to describe it besides that was a complete and total shit show.
Yeah, it was definitely a shit show. I don't think anybody can argue with that. I mean, I literally tweeted that it felt like my brain was disintegrating as I watched it. It was just that bad. But I think one of the things I want to focus on is the difference between Trump 2016 and the Trump 2020 debate style. In 2016, he did have a lot of interruptions and he was kind of wacky, but he did focus on, a little bit of policy. He focused on trade. He focused on outsourcing. He focused on, actual policies. This time around, I mean, what was he talking about? He was just trying to put Joe Biden on the defensive, saying, "Hey, this guy's the far left Antifa supporter. He's not supporting the police." I mean, it was just completely lacking substance, and I think that's why he's gonna completely fail in Wisconsin and ultimately lose it, because Wisconsin is a manufacturing state that has been affected by trade deals like NAFTA, and he completely didn't focus on that. And I think he's on the verge of literally ultimately demising his own campaign because he's lacking some of the charm and some of the things that drew people to him in this election. So he's pretty much handing Joe Biden the election just by default because he's not talking about anything. He's just fighting a culture war, while Joe Biden is out here saying, "Hey, you're failing on COVID. Why don't you talk about that?" And his response is to go to swine flu. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? I mean, this is not the Trump we seen in 2016. This is a completely different Trump, and it's really looking like he's the Fox News president right now because he's just so indoctrinated in that right-wing bubble that he can't even address issues that the overall American electorate actually cares about. I mean, it's just something that I've never even seen from an incumbent, considering he's down. So I don't know. What is your perspective on Trump's strategy from 2016 to now?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. His entire debate strategy did seem to hinder on deflect, distract, project. Anything that Joe Biden brought to come at him with was always countered by, well, you're blank. Instead of having a real policy that he would be pushing to back up ideas, he just tried to turn it back to Joe Biden, which I think was likely the strategy coming in. I know Trump went out of his way to answer any questions from reporters on, "Oh, I'm not preparing. I don't need to prepare. I'm Donald Trump. I'm perfect," and all that. But I definitely do think that one of the angles that they were playing was to try to kind of put Joe Biden in situations that would make him more likely to gaffe. They know that his base eats up the Joe Biden mistakes, and that if he was able to kind of derail Joe's train of thought or anything, it could lead to misspoken phrases, awkward sounding sentences where he may forget the proper word or miss the proper word or whatever. So Trump was just trying to come in and throw everything he could at him to try to distract and derail and bring it back to Biden. I think in terms of 2016 compared to 2020, there is one major difference from his campaign strategy, and that's in 2016 he was able to run on the outsider platform. Drain the swamp was the biggest thing, possibly even the phrase that I heard even more than make America great that first time around was that Donald Trump was going to drain the swamp, especially in Wisconsin. I heard that so much. We're so sick of these career politicians and all they ever do is help the wealthy and help themselves. Well, Donald Trump already is wealthy, so he doesn't need to do that, and he's going to come in and he's going to get rid of all these career politicians. He's going to drain the swamp. Well, you can't really argue that anymore when you have now been the swamp the past 4 years, have not only done nothing to drain it, but have allowed the big chemical company from the town over to start dumping their sludge in the swamp, thus making it worse. The man is creating swamp monsters from what was otherwise an already disgusting, void of life swamp. So that really has kind of pigeonholed him into the current strategy that we're seeing, where he knows he has nothing accomplishment-wise that he can hang his head on. He really didn't do any of the promises he made from 2016. I mean, the wall is up a little bit, but the vast majority of the population doesn't care about the wall. That's just something he does to coddle his base. In terms of actual accomplishments, I don't think there's really anything he can hang his head on, and his campaign and staff knows that. So they just decided, hey, well, we're just going to throw the book at Joe Biden and see what sticks. And he had a couple of decent lines, pointing out the 94 crime bill. Granted, that was obvious and a free slam dunk, basically.
Yeah, but he also immediately contradicted himself in that statement, because he was saying, hey, the crime bill, and also Joe Biden is not pro-police. So it didn't really make sense.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and that's the weird two-pronged angle of it, is that I think outside of just having the main goal of distracting Joe Biden, I think maybe their side initiative was to put Biden in a position where he would have to make statements on the more progressive side of the party. Put him out on a ledge where you're saying like, oh, you support Medicare for all, you're a socialist, thus forcing Biden to come back and say, well, no, I'm not a socialist, I don't want to do any of those things, which would then alienate the progressive base that Trump and Biden, well, maybe not so much Biden, but Trump at least knows that if he can get a lot of the Bernie crowd to either not vote or to vote third party, that would be monumental towards his reelection campaign. So he knew that he had to put Biden in a situation where he would denounce the left, and Biden walked right into that trap, hook, line, and sinker. Numerous times he went out of his way to basically say, no, I don't want to do those things that are popular nationally, whether that was Medicare for all, legalization of marijuana, not a full defund of the police, but, redistribution of police money. And he basically gave the middle finger to his progressive base by aggressively saying, oh, no, I don't want to do all those things. I mean, if Joe Biden was a quarter of the candidate Donald Trump made him out to be, I would be so excited to vote for him. But, instead he has to basically tell all the progressives to piss off, and that he's not going to do all those things. It was almost satirical the way that Donald Trump would say something like, oh, well, you want everybody to have Medicare. You want everybody in America to be taken care of. And then Joe Biden would be like, no, I don't. I don't want everyone taken care of. Well, you don't want people to go to jail for minor drug offenses. No, I don't. I still do want them to, and those of us at home that aren't indoctrinated to, support our team no matter what, tribalistic politics 101, that just want to see good policies, are sitting here like, are you kidding me, dude? Like, just stop talking. Let the dude keep cutting you off. He's making himself look like an ass. But other than that, I thought it went rather well for Biden, besides his obvious rejection of many of these very popular progressive policies. He couldn't have lost this debate. Donald Trump was just so grotesque that no matter what Biden would have done or said, it would have been very difficult for it to be considered a win for the Trump campaign.
Exactly. He pretty much just won by default, just because he didn't completely shit himself. But I think we do have to address the elephant in the room, which is Donald Trump was making fun of Joe Biden for wearing a mask, and then 2 days later we find out that he's been infected with coronavirus. And I think the irony of this whole thing is not necessarily like, oh, it's a hypocrisy burn type thing, but I think it really points out the dangers of making a pandemic, which is a public health concern, political. And I think that has shown, and whether or not how deadly this pandemic is, I think it has ramifications for further any other pandemics in the future, because from now on, there's always going to be people who doubt it. And then there's going to be people who don't doubt it. But if the people who doubt it don't take it serious, then it's going to affect the people who do take it serious. And I think that's why this is so dangerous, because we have a president who's like, oh, it's a liberal thing and they just want to use it to shut down the government. I mean, I don't know how a whole entire planet can make this a liberal ploy just so they can get you out of office. It just doesn't make sense. But I think it really does shows the dangers of politicizing everything. I mean, we politicize, if somebody walks down the streets and spits on the ground, somebody be like, hey, you must be a liberal or something like that. So I think we really have to be careful about it, because, I mean, look at the ramifications. Like, almost everybody in the Trump administration right now is suffering from some type of coronavirus. I mean, even Ron Johnson, our senator here in Wisconsin, has it. So I think we really have to stop, playing these politicized games, because it's really showing the effects, and it's going to affect everybody at the end.
I'm glad you mentioned Ron Johnson, because he actually was at a fundraiser last night with my local rep, Dan Knodel, as well as Alberta Darling, who's up for re-election. They threw, a fundraising dinner, gala, get-together. Ron Johnson was tested on the way to this dinner, but supposedly did not know of the results until afterwards. Of course, this dinner likely had very little mask wearing, no social distancing, any of those things. And now Ron Johnson literally said today that he doesn't see why he has to socially isolate because he has no symptoms. These people don't understand the science. It's almost like we're literally electing the dumbest human beings we possibly could. They're willfully ignorant, and they seem to believe that their ignorance is somehow equivalent to the knowledge that some people have dedicated their entire lives in search of. If somebody spends 50 years studying these viruses to try to learn how they work and how they impact the human body, and then Ron Johnson comes out and just is like, well, I think this, and because opinions are all equal, my ignorance is somehow equal to your opinion, even though your opinion is based on 50 years of knowledge. So it's right on brand for the GOP, honestly. I expect nothing less from them at this point. The Trump situation coming down with COVID now and infecting everybody else, I know we've been saying this now since Trump was elected, but it is going to be very, very difficult for fiction writers, for satirical television shows, for anybody whose job is to make absurd situations seem realistic and humorous. It's going to be a very, very difficult job for them to write believable scripts from now on, because the Trump administration has thrown everything out the wall. This has just been so absolutely incredibly absurd in every way, shape, and form. A beloved figure of the left dies, and the right, in complete hypocrisy of everything that they said when the similar example came up in 2016, rushes to have her replaced. So they throw this massive super spreading event to nominate their preferred candidate, and then that event leads to every single one of them getting infected, and who knows, how their health will go in the long run. Obviously, these people have access to the best medical providers on the planet, so they will likely have a better outcome than somebody who has to go to the hospital but doesn't have insurance and is told, well, just go home, and if it gets any worse, come back. So I have zero sympathy for Trump, for his family, for any of these high-level GOP operatives whatsoever. I mean, my sympathy is reserved for the parents of the essential worker who was forced to go out and do their job because, well, some people are going to have to die for the sake of the economy. Sorry, according to the GOP, so these people go out, they have to work, they come home to take care of their elderly parents. Their elderly parents get sick and die scared and alone at their own home because they have no insurance and can't afford a hospital visit. While Donald Trump, who paid $750 in taxes, has already had hundreds of thousands of dollars of the best medicine in the world given to him directly simply because he's the president of the United States. You want to talk about socialism? Again, it's another prime example of socialism for the rich, rugged individualism for the poor. So my sympathy is reserved for all of those who have suffered through this, the 200,000 plus that are dead, their families, those that are being evicted from their homes because they lost their job due to this crisis. Those are the people who we should reserve our, quote unquote thoughts and prayers for, not the Trumps. In almost every way, shape, and form, they kind of deserve this. In a way, it's poetic justice. So I'm not going to sit here and act like, let's pray for our president, who hope he gets better, because if the shoe was on the other foot, he would be mocking Joe Biden for this, just like he mocked Hillary Clinton for pneumonia in 2016. The right are just the ultimate hypocrites in every way, shape, or form, and we're seeing it on Twitter right now. The very same people who will say, these damn protesters get in my way, I'm going to hit them with my car, I hope they all die, are now saying, wow, our president gets sick and you're not wishing for his best health? You must be a sick individual. Because the right loves to take advantage of the decorum of the left. We have what's the word I'm looking for? We have ethics. We try to be morally righteous. When you don't hold yourself to those standards, when you have no honor, you can do whatever you want and throw it out the window and behave however you like because you can use other people's honor against them. Much like we're hearing from Chris Wallace today that the Trumps arrived late to the debate and did not get tested, even though that was agreed upon in the pre-debate rules that all parties would be tested. They showed up late, so it was a honor code that they weren't positive and they just went on with the debate. Well, you can't have an honor code with someone like Donald Trump because he has no honor. He says whatever he wants with no repercussions, as we now know that he was likely already sick at that point. And then none of the other Trumps wore masks for the entire debate. It's plausibly absurd, and I just cannot understand how more Americans don't see through this obvious charade. It's disgusting.
Yeah, exactly. And we're going to continue to see this because nobody's holding them accountable. Because look at the Democrats. They're completely inept at fighting this fight. I mean, look at what's about to go on with the Supreme Court seat. Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away recently, and the Republicans are gearing up to put her on the Supreme Court. And you know what the Democrats are doing? They're saying, hey, we don't know if we should attack her because she's a successful woman, and we don't want to do any attacks on successful women. And that's just completely mind-boggling to me because this Supreme Court seat is going to affect generations to come. She's not an old woman. She's a pretty young woman. And the fact that Democrats are worried about identity politics and how it looks on them just so they can save face and it's going to affect generations to come, it just doesn't even make sense to me. And the effectiveness of the Democratic Party is lacking so bad that it's almost as if there is no opposition party. And it's sad to say because, I mean, look at pretty much any issue you look at the coronavirus relief packages. They didn't fight on that in the first initial bills, which is why we're in the position we are in now. And they're enabling this Republican Party to be so terrible because there is no opposition.
Right. It's controlled opposition. Yeah. They're professional losers, basically.
Exactly. And we can't let them off the hook because, yeah, the Republicans are bad. We know that. But the Democrats, for not being an actual opposition party, are enabling this party to be so terrible because who's gonna stand up to them? And right now it's just regular people like me and you, and we have no power. We're just, you can go tweet storm on Twitter.
I'm glad you mentioned the importance of the Barrett nomination. Patrick Ruffini, who is a Republican pollster from Echelon Insights, tweeted literally today that in his mind, confirming ACB is worth more than winning the election and definitely worth more than whatever marginal cost might be incurred by forcing it through at this point. You force her through, like you said, she's a young woman. You now have a 6-3 control of the most important court on the land. The court that can dictate basically everything. I mean, Citizens United has by itself kind of destroyed American democracy. Court rulings are some of the most influential and impactful policies set forth on the country as a whole. So if you're able to get 6 of the 9 justices, with I believe it'd be 5 of the 6 elected or chosen, by a president who lost the popular vote, it's just so incredibly grotesque to call America a democracy when in reality we are ruled by a very small minority. If we are unable to do something about this, because the Democrats have already come out and said that they will not expand the court no matter what. Again, like you said, controlled opposition. They're just playing into what they need to be. As long as they're less evil than the Republicans, they'll still garner all the votes from the people who want what's best for the country. And so it gives them a pretty wide angle to play from, considering the Republicans at this point are cartoonishly evil. They just got to be a little bit better than that. As long as they're marginally better than that, swabs of Americans will flock to them because they have no other option. So it's a dark place we're in right now. I'd be lying if I told you otherwise. The next month, 2 months, 3 months, we're in for a wild ride, to say the least.
Winter is coming. That's a reference to Game of Thrones.
Actually, that's a great quote too. I saw on Twitter that I believe it was, I don't want to say a name because I might be wrong, but I think it was David Sirota, formerly of the Bernie campaign, who said Mitch McConnell treats politics like Game of Thrones. Everything, is a life or death fight where every single battle has monumental meaning. The Democrats treat politics like the West Wing. It's all for theater. It's all an act. We all need to be civil, and we need to act with professional etiquette and all that stuff. And the Republicans just don't play by those rules. They do what needs to be done to win. And that's why they continue to wash the Democrats in every way, shape, or form.
Exactly. I don't want to spoil anything for anybody who hasn't watched the show, but to further that reference, I feel like the Republicans are Littlefinger and the Democrats are Ned Stark. And if you've seen the show, you know what I'm talking about.
I have not, but I'll take your word that it's a great comparison.
It's
I've been meaning to watch it for so long, and I've just never gotten around to it. Though I probably should at this point, because who knows how much longer America's got.
Yeah, might as well.
Looks like we're running out of time at this point.
Yeah, binge it before 2021 comes. But getting off the topic of Game of Thrones, what do you feel about Trump campaigning in Wisconsin?
Literally tonight, Donald Trump was supposed to have a rally in Green Bay, which I believe is the second fastest or second highest positive COVID testing rate city in the country. So, and then he was going to be going to La Crosse either later this week or earlier this week. I can't remember for sure, but I remember he was going to be in La Crosse and Green Bay, which are 2 of the epicenters nationally for coronavirus right now. It's almost like he's purposely trying to spread this. Like he knows that some kind of cataclysmic event like this would be beneficial to his reelection campaign. I'll be brutally honest too with you, Andre. At first, when I heard that he was positive, I thought it was a publicity stunt. There was a number of reasons for that. One, he saw how much money the Biden campaign raised after that disastrous debate for him. So he wanted to fill up the war chest a little bit, garner some of that sympathy. I mean, the campaign was already sending out emails saying, we need more money now. Donald Trump has COVID and he needs your help to help push through. So, he garners a sympathy vote, much like Boris Johnson did in the UK, where a lot of the current events that were wrapping up his administration were kind of swept under the rug while everybody prayed for him to get better. 2, it's a great distraction. This was an atrocious week for Trump. His tax returns, the Melania Trump Christmas tapes. That's something we didn't even cover, the Melania Trump Christmas tapes. Then the debate, which was obviously a shit show, as we already discussed. Part 3, maybe he comes back after 2 weeks and says, "Oh, I'm fine. I'm great. I'm healthy. See, coronavirus was a hoax. It was overblown." And then he can act like he was right this whole time, or part 4, the same as part 3, except he comes back in 5 to 7 days and insists he has some miracle cure that, makes the stock prices for whatever company that owns the miracle cure jump through the roof. They make $1 gazillion and he gets a little bit of money on the back end or something. I was nearly certain that was the case. Obviously now it's looking like he probably does have it, and I would have been wrong, but I'm glad that I would have been wrong about that because, like I said, I don't want the American president to die. I'm not going to root for that. I believe he deserves to be in jail, and I would much rather see him in prison than taking the easy way out, if you will. And I'm more scared of Mike Pence than I am of Donald Trump. So if any of these things go down, some of the memes with Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, and then Hope Hicks photoshopped on the front of it, if this ends up being the thing that kind of derails all of these career politicians and really gives the American people the strength and unity to kind of rise up, that would be just tremendous, because that's really what we need right now. The two-party system is not working. Both parties are controlled by their big money corporate donors. We need to have a movement that pushes people power first. And until that happens, until America has some kind of revolutionary breakthrough, we are going to just keep repeating these cycles of atrocious Republicans come in, ruin everything, make themselves look terrible. Democrat comes in, sweeps up the mess, but doesn't actually do anything for real long-term stability or real long-term change, thus paving the path for another even worse Republican to come forth. I mean, remember after George W. Bush, I was all but certain the Republican Party would never win another presidential election, and then somehow they got Donald Trump in. Well, now with Donald Trump being even worse than Bush, Bush has been rehabilitated into some kind of, man, I wish we still had George W. Bush, the war criminal, as our president, because Donald Trump is so much worse. And I fear that a Joe Biden presidency that doesn't actually lead to true systemic change will just be setting us up for an even worse fascist than Donald Trump the next time the pendulum swings back to the Republicans, whether that's Ted Cruz or Tom Cotton or Tucker Carlson or Sean Hannity or whoever it may be. Some kind of right-wing populist will come forth unless these systemic issues are taken care of. And when that happens and this fascist is competent, unlike Donald Trump, we are in a lot of trouble. A lot of trouble.
And that's why a weak opposition party is so dangerous. But
do you want to discuss the Christmas tapes real quick? I just find it hilarious that, first of all, I kind of agree with Melania Trump. I think Christmas decorating is way overblown, and I don't think it's a necessity. I want religion to be as far separated from the state as possible, because a lot of people use religion as a crux to justify their otherwise poor behavior. Or you get someone like Bill Barr who believes that his religion is, the only true religion and therefore must be enforced upon everybody else. My religious freedom is that you can't have your religious freedom, because that would be superseding my religious freedom type deal. So I completely agree with her conceptually that the decorating of Christmas and everything is overblown and unnecessary. But if Michelle Obama had said the exact same thing Melania Trump had said, the conservatives would be all over it. They would be blowing up every airwave that would listen about how the Obamas are the Antichrist and they're vehemently anti-Christmas and they hate America and they hate Christianity and they want to kill Christmas and all that stuff. And Melania Trump does it, and you don't even hear about it within 24 hours. The news has already moved on to something new. So again, it's hypocrisy at its finest, and it's what we've come to expect at this point. Any American citizen that's paying attention is well aware that it's not about the action itself. It's about how we can project our issues with the action onto somebody else.
Well, my personal feeling about the whole Christmas thing in the first place is that at one point, yeah, maybe it was a legit holiday used to bring families together and religions together. But in America, it's used just any other capitalist tool to sell products and make money.
It's a consumer holiday.
Consumer holiday.
Nothing more, nothing less. And that's why they call that like the winter time is generally Black Friday and stuff, because that's when a lot of these companies finally turn a profit for the years, because Americans have had it so ingrained that come Christmas time, come the holidays, the way you show your love to your family is by buying them stuff. We are a culture of consumers, nothing more, nothing less. Our
Exactly.
job is to go out and spend money. So they have us tricked into thinking that if you don't go out and spend money and buy stuff for people, you must not really
Well,
love
that's the
them. So
thing. That's the
everybody's
thing.
all worried
They
about
don't
it.
really care about religion or family values. It's all about tricking the masses into buying more things. And if you stop buying an endless consumer of consumption, then you break down capitalism, which they do not want to see. And that's what it's really about. I mean, when it comes down to the core, they just use it as a tool to keep people's minds in this concept of endless consumption, that you have to buy these Christmas trees to satisfy your family. You have to buy these toys to satisfy your children. You have to buy these decorations to be cheerful and have holiday spirit. And it's all just a ploy. It's all just to keep people to have this endless consumption mindset. I mean, how many people actually value most of the things that they get on Christmas? I mean, I don't even remember half the things I've gotten on Christmas. So, I mean, it doesn't mean anything. It's just a tool to keep the masses buying and consuming. That's all it is.
And with statistically, we also know that the holidays are some of the most stressful time. It's like 70 or 75% of Americans find the holidays to be incredibly stressful and would rather not deal with family or any of the other holiday associated things. And I think a lot of that, granted, there are families who likely just don't want to see their family, their other extended family or whatever, but I think a lot of it is financial. If most Americans don't have the kind of excess cash flow that they can just be going out and buying all these hordes of gifts for everyone that they know. So knowing that, well, I have to buy them gifts because they're going to buy me gifts, and it makes me look like I don't love them if I don't give them gifts. So now you're choosing either to pay for your child to be able to afford Bucketeer basketball, or buying them a Christmas gift. And a lot of people end up going with the Christmas gift because, like you said, we've had it ingrained that, well, on holidays you buy people that you love stuff. So they don't want their kid to think they don't love them, or that Santa's not real or whatever, when they know all the other children will be discussing that. So instead of giving the child a good experience that they would love for them to be able to do, get outside the house, meet new people, enjoy their basketball season, the child might not be able to conceptually understand that we can only afford one or the other and doesn't want to be left with nothing on Christmas. I know a lot of parents that I have spoken with, that's one of their greatest fears, is that on Christmas or a birthday that they don't have the money to get their child something, even something small, because they know it'll break their child's heart. And that's American consumerism at its finest. We don't care about family values. We don't care about any of that. I mean, if the Republicans cared about family values, they wouldn't have a thrice divorced 5 children with 3 different women serial adulterer as the harbinger of Jesus Christ. Like, it's wild that Barack Obama could be the Antichrist, and then Donald Trump is the one that they put forth as the religious champion. It just shows that it's not, like you said, it's not about family values. It's not about any of those things. It's about pushing the cause of capitalism and allowing for further exploitation of the working class.
Exactly, but just fess up, Will. You just hate America. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, that seems to be a very common deflection from, and maybe that is just projection. Maybe conservatives are starting to hate what America's become because they thought of America as a white Christian nation. So they see all these immigrants coming in and they're like, oh, well, they're not white and Christian, so they're not true Americans, and we're losing my America. So I'm going to project it onto the people who want to make America better. It's the old adage of patriotism versus nationalism. Patriotism is loving your country so much that you want what's best for your country, which would be a lot of the things we're discussing today: healthcare for our citizens, fixing a disastrously corrupt criminal justice system that disproportionately affects poor and minority communities. These things would help America as a whole. But, they'll say, well, you hate America because we're trying to change America for the better, because they are nationalists who assume that America is great inherently by being America and therefore is perfect and cannot be improved in any way, shape, or form. And I think that's a great point to have made, that maybe they're just maybe they're just upset that they see the culture that they've grown up in starting to fade. I mean, America's always been the great melting pot, and they like to brag about it and tout it, how America is just so diverse and everything. But then when they actually see the diversity starting to kind of grow, they seem to be scared. Maybe it's because they know minorities are treated poorly, and that's why they're so scared of white people becoming the minority, huh? So they're admitting there's systemic racism. No, that can't be it.
I would hope not. That's some. Well, I mean, anything is possible, but I'm not sure they think that deeply about it. I think it's simply that they do not like change, and whenever you try to change something, there's always going to be quite stiff resistance. And that's in any society, whether it's even, just think of like when somebody wants to change a procedure in the workplace, everybody hates it. I mean, it's the same concept here in America. We're trying to change the current system, and they don't like it because they benefit from the current system, which makes sense. And If you're benefiting or you're privileged from the current system, why would you want it to change to benefit somebody else? And doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to take your benefits away. It's just going to mean that somebody else is going to have those same benefits. And I think they come from the mindset that it will be taken away from them, that more freedom and benefits for somebody else means less freedom and less benefits for them, which is completely misconceptualized.
They do think that, though. I've heard people make that argument because a lot of their identity is the fact that they think they are superior Americans. They have more money, they have more wealth, they have more influence, they have more resources. They use this to take advantage of others, to step over the little guys on the way up to the top. And so if the little guys are given more help, more resources, they can't so easily stomp all over them. They can't so easily take advantage of them. A lot of these people look at life as kind of a zero-sum game, rather than looking at it like we do as, well, why don't we do something that helps everyone? They look at it as, well, you can't help everyone. You can only help some people, because in order to help some people, somebody else has to be hurt. So I would rather you be hurt and me be helped than both of us be helped, because I won't be helped as much. It's a disgusting, narcissistic, egocentric mindset, but I've spoken with a lot of conservatives who fall into that category, and I think it's difficult. Like you said, humans are creatures of repetition. We love our habits. We love our structure, and changing that structure can be scary for a lot of people who have become accustomed to their way of life. It's why I kind of think of the Republican Party as the regressive party rather than the conservative party, because they seem to want to go back to the ways of old in every way, shape, or form, despite the fact that a healthy society should always be improving upon itself, making itself better. It's the same people who will say, like, oh, well, the Democrats were the ones who founded the KKK. Yes, that is accurate. Does that mean that opinions and minds can't grow, can't change as new information is made available? Is that not growing as an individual? And I mean, you and I hate the Democratic Party just as much as, I don't know about just as much, but we're pretty vehemently against the controlled losers, as we've been saying. But they have made a lot of progress in comparison to the conservatives, who seem to be kind of going backwards on a lot of social issues over the past 5, 10, 15 years.
Yeah, it's a sad state of affair, but I think the light that always shines through for me through all of this is that in the times of most desperate times of our history, there has always been a movement to stand up, and I think we are seeing the seeds of that planet today. We're seeing organizations like our Wisconsin Revolution, MPP, and all these solidarity movements coming together to fight back against the established order. So we're in dark times, but I always try to have a bit of optimism due to all of this, and try not to get too down about it. But I think we're in for a hell of a movement, and it's going to be history in the making.
The night is darkest just before the dawn.
Exactly. I think we should end on that quote.
Shout out to Christopher Nolan. I love that trilogy, my friend.
Oh yeah, shout out to Tenet too. If you guys haven't seen that, go and check it out. Obviously, social distance and wear a mask if you're going out to a movie theater.
Hey, I think home theaters are well, not everyone can afford a home theater, but like the on-demand channels, I personally love the on-demand channels. Yes, the theater is a fun experience, but am I gonna pay $15 for a popcorn and a soda when I can just go to my fridge and grab a water bottle and and some candy myself and watch it in my nice comfy recliner? I'll take that personally every day, but I'm not gonna hate on those who like the theater experience because I understand that too. But my point is more maybe now's not the best time.
Well, you can always take the alternative approach. I mean, you can get a backdrop, which aren't really that expensive. Get a home projector. They vary in price, and get a nice comfy couch or chair, and you can set up your own home theater. I mean, I have it in my home. It's pretty nice. I don't have to pay extra for snacks. So, I mean, you can always try alternative routes. And the thing about a theater that's really nice is just that the fact of the concept of that you're going out the house. It's not necessarily the experience anymore, because we all have these huge TVs in our houses, surround sound and all this stuff. So it's more about getting out rather than actually the experience of it anymore, because we all have Netflix for the most part, even if you're still in somebody's password. So that's what I would think about it.
I like the ambiance of a theater too. You're surrounded by the sound. It's almost it's a lot more likely to kind of put yourself into that world than when you're sitting at home. Though if you're watching for a great story, you don't necessarily need to be engrossed. But for something that's a visual masterpiece, the theater is still prime time. Definitely.
Yeah, that's very true. I don't think anybody would have liked that movie Avatar as much if they haven't seen it in like 3D theaters or IMAX or something like that. So you got a point there.
I forgot about Avatar now that 2 and 3 have been supposedly slated to come out for a couple years now, and I feel like I've been hearing that for 5 years at this point.
The release date is pushed back to 2030.
Yeah. And then they're going to push it back to 2040. James Cameron will be dead for 15 years when it comes out. But when it does come out, it'll be fired.
Most
Don't
fired
worry about that.
dead person movie ever. We got some good times coming up. But we had a great talk today. We're definitely going to do this again. And thanks for coming on again, Will.
It's always a great time, Andre. I look forward to our next time. Hopefully we have a less interest. Well, I don't know about that. Some of these weeks are kind of fun to be a part of, but I think it'll be hard. We'll be hard pressed to have a week full of more news than this past week was. So maybe we can get back to prepared, set conceptual ideas to discuss, rather than just having to cover the 10,000 years worth of breaking news that we've dealt with since Tuesday.
Exactly. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining the revolution. We'll catch you next time.
We always say the Black Panther Party that they can do anything they want to us. We might not be back. I might be in jail. I might be anywhere. But when I